The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank my friend, the honourable member for Markham Unionville. I put this question to you with some trepidation because I do try very much to maintain as much as possible a non-partisan approach, particularly when we're so unified. But I'm troubled by, I'm wondering what kind of influence we have with the government, the new government of Egypt. We didn't play a role in encouraging Cairo Spring. I cast my mind back. I remember that I was the only leader of any of the parties that said that we should pressure Hosni Mubarak to resign. And when he was toppled, the first comment by our Prime Minister was, well, I guess you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. So there wasn't a sense that we were building a strong relationship with that new government. And I wonder if you have a sense, if we're building that now, and again, I apologize for bringing back what the Prime Minister's comments were at the time. We certainly took a lead in Libya. But in Egypt, we didn't. And I'm wondering if the honourable member thinks that will affect our ability to influence this government to protect the lives of Coptic Christians.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
I thank my colleague for her question. I think it's a really good point. I'd forgotten about that, but I do remember that comment by the Prime Minister back then. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It hardly seemed an enthusiastic endorsement of the Arab Spring in Egypt. Now, I seem to remember our leader was a little more positive than that, but the Prime Minister is the one that really counts in foreign relations. So one cannot undo what happened in history, but clearly I would think that comment or the lack of enthusiasm that he displayed would not be a positive in our ability to exert influence on Egypt, but we have to work with what we've got and do our best given where we are.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to respond to something that this member raised in his comments and several other members have raised, and that's with respect to the preliminary budget for the Office of Religious Freedoms. They've quoted the number $5 million, and what I need to tell them is two things. One is that it is our hope and expectation that 90% of that $5 million annual budget will be used for programs to actually protect religious minorities around the world, including Coptic Christians in Egypt. And secondly, he should know, I would think he would know, because he's a wise man, he should know that the U.S. Office of Religious Freedoms has an annual budget of $10 million, and the size of the U.S. economy compared to the Canadian economy is roughly 10 times the size of the Canadian economy. Typically, any Canadian organization would be about 1/10 of the size. We've already gone 5 times beyond that. But that's the starting budget. We're working with religious communities across Canada to decide what kinds of programs will actually be effective in protecting religious freedoms around the world. So here's my question to that honourable member. He was a member, in fact, he was a minister in a government that ruled this country from 1993 to 2006. The U.S. Office of Religious Freedoms was created in 1998. I'd like him to explain to this House why they didn't create this Office of Religious Freedom to protect the Copts.
I'm going to have to stop the Parliamentary Secretary there to allow the member for Markham
Mr. Speaker, I
to
suspect the reason why the U.S. budget is only $10 million is because, as we heard before, under Barack Obama, they slashed the massive budget under George Bush because George Bush's Office of Religion Freedom used it as a Republican hiring tool, is what we were told. And $5 million, I know a little bit about money and economics. You can't do any. He says that $5 million will be used for programs to defend religions around the world.
He's smoking a pipe.
Come on. It's going to cost a few $1 million just for the bureaucrats and the travel. You're left with, say, $2 million. Programs to defend religions around the world, like about 5 of them. This doesn't add up.
Time for very brief question or comment. L'honourable deputy de Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
I think the last thing, I've been sitting here for a few hours now, and the last thing that Canadians want to see is partisan sniping or politicians fighting in a church over a microphone for the right to speak or such actions like that. Canadians want to see concrete actions on the international scene to improve situations. So I would ask the honourable member, what would those concrete actions be that we should take, all 3 parties should take to improve this situation?
Member for Markham Unionville.
Well, I agree with the comment that we shouldn't be too partisan. I didn't think I was being too partisan. I gave a long list of the points on which we agreed, and I expressed skepticism that anything real would come out of this. This is an honest approach, and I haven't heard much evidence that there is much meat coming out of this. And in terms of the impact of this Office of Religious Freedom, I would estimate that the 2 visits that my colleague from Mount Royal made to Egypt when he was Minister of Justice would do a lot more than this Office of Religion.
I'll have to stop the honourable